Joining us now to discuss just how bubblicious BYU is in the grand scheme of things, our good friend Blaine Fowler, who has just finished his workout. Right, Blaine?
No, I was going to go for a run, but here in Fresno, it's completely socked in with fog, and it's yucky, and it's cold. So I just rode the bike. That's no fun, I know.
Sounds wonderful.
I know.
When you look at BYU on the bubble, what do you think of BYU's chances of getting into the NCAA tournament as we get closer to the end of February here?
Well, they're not out, and so we'll say it that way. It's still a long shot for them, but they've got some work in front of them. Obviously, they can't lose to anyone except for Gonzaga here to finish the season out, or they're certainly out. And then so much depends on what happens in other conferences. Right, for instance, right now the Mountain West Conference is looking like a two-bid conference this year. But if one of those two teams don't win their conference tournament and a third team gets in, that bumps BYU down. So when you're that squarely on the outside of the bubble as BYU is right now, you can't afford to lose, and you need everybody that could move in front of you that's behind you right now to stay behind you. You need the top seeds in all of the conferences to win. I'd feel a lot better if their RPI was in the top 40. They'd be a shoe-in, and St. Mary's and BYU have been lurking in that 56 to 60 range. I think today they were both tied at 57, which doesn't put you automatically in typically, but puts you within shouting distance if all the right things happen. Now, if they want to move up big time and improve their RPI and their BPI, they can go beat Gonzaga next week, and that would change everything. They'd be squarely in if they could do that. And they could probably be squarely in if they won out all the way to the tournament finals and even lost to Gonzaga in the tournament finals. They would probably be in. So can't afford to lose one, and if they really want to vault themselves back into the discussion, they go beat Gonzaga.
Blaine Fowler, our dual threat analyst here on BYU TV Sports College Basketball and College Football Insider, joining us on the show. Blaine, there are a number of topics I want to address within this whole RPI discussion, but right now I'm going to take it to the conference level. You mentioned the Mountain West Conference is a two-bid league right now. Their RPI as a conference is 12th. BYU in the West Coast Conference, the WCC somewhere around 8 or 9, depending on which one you look at, but currently a one-bid league? How does that make sense for a conference that is ranked so much higher in the RPI to not be guaranteed at least as many bids as the 12th rated conference?
Yeah, and here's the thing about it this year. Because the Mountain West has a couple of teams that are higher in the RPI and then some that are really, really bad, it brings their average down. San Diego State all year has been in the top 20 in RPI. They played a ridiculous schedule. So they're up there higher, and Colorado State's been a top 30 team in the RPI all year. And then they just drop off the face of the earth this year. So the Mountain West isn't deep this year. So they have to have two quality teams. When you look at the West Coast Conference, Gonzaga's been up there all year. They've been in the top 10 in RPI, and they've been in the top 3 in BPI, which takes into account more factors. It takes into account the sites you've played at and winning margin and who was hurt and who wasn't hurt and all that. I actually like the BPI, and with BPI, BYU would be in. Because they've been a top 35 BPI for the last several weeks. But the problem for the West Coast Conference is once you get past BYU and St. Mary's at 57-ish, then it really, really drops off. Portland in almost everything is the next one at 119 or 120 is where they've been hovering. And then it goes to Pepperdine at 130 and San Diego at 172 and on and on and on. And the bottom of the conference, LMU and Pacific, 209 and 242. And so there's just a more dramatic drop-off after Gonzaga and the WCC, and Colorado State and San Diego State have been just higher all year long in that top 20.
Explain this to me, Blaine. Why is BYU in the 30s in ESPN's BPI, Pomeroy, Sagarin, yet they are outside in all accounts of the bubble watch? Why? How does that make any sense? They're in the 30s in those.
I guess people don't value BPI enough. I like BPI, and the reason I like it is because it does take into account the BPI is supposed to be a better predictor of how teams are and how good they're likely to be going forward because it takes into account who's still on the team, who's hurt, and who was out in specific wins, the sites that they played at, the strength of the opponent. So it seems to me that the BPI takes more into account I just like that system better than the RPI. And I don't even understand the RPI formula as well as I should, but it seems like well, look at it. Gonzaga's been consistently 5 or 6 places higher in the BPI than they have in the RPI, and BYU is significantly higher in the BPI than the RPI. But RPI seems like the formula that the NCAA selection committee uses and values the most. Certainly they consider other things, but when you're talking about these different relative power indexes or basketball power index, the RPI is the one that they pay more attention to.
Blaine, we had Jay Billis, ESPN insider, on the show last week, and he said he felt BYU could get into the NCAA tournament without beating Gonzaga in the regular season finale or in the West Coast Conference tournament, which would mean that with 24 wins, not including a win over Gonzaga, Billis says BYU deserves to be in the field, and he's confident that they will be. Where do you stand on BYU with 24 wins and a non-Gonzaga victory getting in as an at-large team?
I still think they can. I really do, because they're going to have to beat St. Mary's again, who's another top 60, in the semifinals of the West Coast Conference Tournament to get into that position. So even if they were to lose twice to Gonzaga, losing to Gonzaga doesn't hurt them at all in terms of RPI. In fact, it
will help them.
A quality loss, right? Because it strengthens your strength of schedule component of all the formulas just by playing them. So by virtue of playing them, you improve your standing. So you could lose to them, it doesn't hurt you. Just by virtue of playing them, it helps you. You don't lose to anybody else, so you're going to have an RPI that's a little stronger. And again, it comes back to this. You can't have Boise State in the Mountain West Conference rise up and win their conference tournament. You need to have San Diego State or Colorado State win it, right? Because Boise State's been just a little bit in front of BYU all year long in the ratings. And so they come up and win that tournament, then BYU, who maybe by virtue of the schedule and playing Gonzaga twice and beating St. Mary's, moves slightly in front of them. That team takes a tournament spot, and now BYU's out. And that story would repeat itself in multiple conferences around the country. You have to have, when you're this much on the bubble, you have to have the high seeds in as many conference tournaments as possible, win that conference tournament, and not have upsets where people have no business being in the tournament whatsoever make it in and bump you further down the list. That's the key for them.
And
can they get in? Yes.
And you'll get a front row view of Colorado State tonight. You're on the call. Colorado State at Fresno State on ESPN3. BYU's won 3 games in a row, Blaine. They seem to have turned it around, led by defense and rebounding. This seems like version 12 or something of BYU's team this year, but they found something with Josh Sharp, who started as a sophomore, and they've gone back to that model.
What have we been begging them to do for the last month? We've been saying, you know what? We just want to see him have the ability to win ugly. We just want to see him, really pick up their game defensively and show us that they can rebound. Rebounding and defense are not just necessarily athleticism. It's about effort, and I've been disappointed that they haven't been able to find the right combination to just really get after it. And what they've proven to us in the last couple of games, they can do it. Their game against St. Mary's was terrific, and maybe it's a mindset that Josh Sharp brings. But they held St. Mary's well below their shooting average, both from the field and from three. They did a terrific job against Pacific and held them below their season average in shooting percentage and three-point percentage. BYU in both of those games, because offense leads the defense for them, they get more runouts, they get more opportunities early in offense. So their shooting percentage was good in both of those games. In fact, they shot 50% in both games. So their good defense and their effort defensively pays off for them, shooting better offensively. And so that's the formula to me moving forward. And if Josh Sharp is the guy that gives them that energy, then, gosh, let's just keep playing the guy because he has made a difference. And I think the other thing is we're seeing Kaufusi really starting to understand it's taken this long, and you can't blame him. The guy didn't even play his senior year in basketball, right? And then he was gone on a mission. But look at the way he defended Brad Waldo in that game. And I know he had 17 points, but he only had 5 rebounds. And Kaufusi made problems for him. And Sharp did a great job of double-teaming, and he wasn't hesitant when he came baseline to double-team. And that combination has made a big difference inside for BYU. And even though they're not getting tons of points, they're getting production defensively in the rebounding game. And that's all they need because they have plenty of guards that can score.
Blaine, we have saved the best question for last. It is our Twitter question today, and that is, who is your all-time starting 5 for BYU basketball? We're asking this because of something that came up on EliteDaily.com yesterday, where they said you could pit your all-time 5 against your rival's all-time 5 in a basketball game. Who would you start on BYU as the all-time starting 5?
Oh gosh, that's a hard one because you have a tendency to just want to put all guys that can score. Like if I'm just putting guys that can score, then I'd put Jimmer and Danny Ainge at the guards, and I'd put Michael Smith or maybe I put Devin Durant and Hawes at the 3 and the 4, and then I make Michael Smith start at the center because he's tall enough.
Okay, so you would go small, but just like crazy scoring.
Yeah, but I don't know if we could defend anybody. We'd have to score 100 with that team. Like Danny's like the only guy that can defend on that, right? So he's the only lockdown defender the whole group. So to make it work, I almost have to put Sean Bradley in the back end at center, just so that these guys can just funnel stuff to him and we can get a couple of stops, and then we outscore him 100 to 90, right? And the guy we're probably leaving out, or I got to have Jackson Emery coming off the bench if I need a lockdown defender on the perimeter, because he may be as good. In fact, I think Jackson Emery is as good a perimeter defender, maybe the best BYU's ever had there. And
I'd put him in my 5 just for defense, Blaine.
Yeah, and so it depends on what you want to put out there. If I just go all offense, I go with that 5 that I told you. But I think that Sean Bradley has a role on that team because of his defense. I think that Jackson Emery. And then the one guy that we always forget because we didn't get to see him play enough because there's not enough footage of him, but the footage that I have seen, the most athletic guy I've ever seen for his time, who I think would fit in today's basketball, is Chris Chosen.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think he's such a complete player. I don't know how you leave him off. He was so good. He was so long. He was so athletic. He was great offensively. He could play defense. And so I know I just gave you 8, but there's my team. There's my guys off the bench, and I can figure out how to play defense. So just give me those 8.
Yeah, Jarom made 3 teams. He's got 15.
I have
so
3 teams.
You've done better than Jarom.
You want to what? You give me those 8, and I'll go win me an NCAA championship for those 8.
Seriously.
Blaine, great to talk to you, man. We'll look forward to seeing you again. Have a good call tonight with Colorado State and Fresno State, and we'll see you down the line.
All right, guys. Good to talk to you.